I think we should move on now to another very exciting director and someone who also has a behind the scenes look at their new movie on Netflix. Guillermo del Toro. Did you happen to check out his behind the scenes look at Pinocchio and how he basically approached the stop motion animation and his new spin on the classic, right, children's tale?
I was able to, so I watched Pinocchio, okay, and then I didn't like press watch next or anything. I just let it run through. I was writing something down or something, I don't know, and it just went right into it, and it was pretty cool. I did watch like the first few or several minutes of the behind the scenes look, and it actually was pretty cool of Guillermo del Toro actually like talking through how they shot this, because obviously this has a unique animation style, the stop motion and the detailed animation that you're not really accustomed to seeing. You're used to like a Disney or a Pixar or a much more pure animation form. This was not that, and it was pretty cool to hear his comments around it and how he actually shot it, sometimes actually shrinking the actual Pinocchio figure down to like the size of your finger. It was pretty cool to listen to.
And he's been someone, it seems like he's making these comments regarding animation. It's not just for children. He certainly has a passion for like this medium of filmmaking. And I think it also has to do with him trying to like almost propel himself into the best picture race. We haven't seen many animated films get nominated for best picture. I know Toy Story 3 did back in the day, back in I believe 2011. I don't know if there has been one since. Uh, I guess Hugo. Hugo was animated right from Scorsese. I believe that got nominated for Best Picture. Is that
It
right?
did. It did get nominated.
Yeah. So like I think we have Del Toro going for the same kind of thing here. And we are going to jump into the Rotten Tomatoes, the IMDb, and the synopsis. Before I do so, man, what are your thoughts on Guillermo del Toro? Because it seems like he'd always been a director that had been respected by everyone in the film community, right? Audiences and those who work in the industry. It seems like Pan's Labyrinth really like catapulted himself into like a must see type of filmmaker. But now I think over the years, and especially after Shape of Water, it seemed like a crowning on his career. And now everyone wants to work with him. And obviously, he comes after Shape of Water. He does Nightmare Alley, like a Bradley Cooper vehicle. And then with Kate Blanchett also. And now he kind of has the freedom to do whatever he wants and put his own like monster filled like spin on things. And now like everyone wants to be in his movies. Like even Kate Blanchett's like voicing a monkey, right? Spazatura in this animated adventure. Like where do you think Del Toro is on in his career?
He's at the top for sure. He's in that conversation with the top of the top. He's not at the top as like we talk with Scorsese, but he's in that upper tier barely, I think. You mentioned Pan's Labyrinth, right? But like he's done a lot of other things as well. Um, and he's always leaned towards that dark, kind of scary horror, or not horror, but like scary vibes. Like Shape
Mhm.
of Water has that scary vibe to it. Hellboy 2004, scary vibes to it. Crimson Peak, the movie that you talked about a couple months ago here on the pod, just scary vibes all around. And look at this Pinocchio. This is not your typical Pinocchio, and that's why you have the conversation about was this movie for kids or not. And it's like no, it's just animation. It's just focusing on animation. It's just art. It's a movie. It could be
Mhm.
for kids. It could be for everybody. And this could be for everybody, really. But it's not particularly for kids, which I just respect. And that goes along with the meme that goes around with Guillermo del Toro that you always see on Twitter and Instagram where it's I love cinema. And
Mhm.
this movie basically was that. This was, if you had to put a movie next to that meme, this was that movie. And it's perfect that it was Guillermo del Toro making this movie for it.
Yeah, and it really did, even though it was animated, and it has a lot of familiar like Guillermo del Toro like actors that are a part of this project, like Ron Perlman. I mentioned Kate Blanchett earlier. It felt like a Del Toro movie, even though it wasn't live action. It still has like an underworld that's a part of this story. It still has like these like you're talking about these scary elements, these scary looking characters, and you could tell even with the kids story that's been adapted so many different times, it felt like this was Guillermo del Toro, even right in its stop motion form. So We'll get to that and we'll compare it to the other Pinocchio movie that came out and the Disney remake and the big differences there and what made this one presumably so much more enjoyable than what we got in another, I guess, abysmal Disney live action remake. But Rotten Tomatoes has Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio at 97% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes, 85% audience score, IMDb 7.9 out of 10. Synopsis reads: a father's wish magically brings a wooden boy to life in Italy, giving him a chance to care for the child. All right. So I think we could start with the idea that I mentioned previously. What made this different? How does this separate itself from the classic story that was retold by Disney this year? What makes this one so much more unique and intriguing, Ricky Flex?
Well, the obvious is that they don't follow the script from the previous movies or
Mm-hmm.
story. You know, like yeah, they use that as an adaptation. They do take from it, especially the big things. There's still a beast. There's still a puppet that turns into a real life, right? That wants to become a real boy, and they still have the carnival. But what they took for me, they took the best parts of the actual Pinocchio movie, the best storylines. And rather than doing like mini skits and having different ways that Pinocchio is like becoming a real boy, they focused on one and then they maybe added their own in addition to it, but interconnecting like the whole story so it all connects. And then at the end of the day, there's still a beast, big climactic ending where he becomes a real boy. And I think the overall story though of him becoming like mortal, like I think that was Guillermo del Toro's writing touch. So overall, like yeah, like Geppetto might like he was a drunk in this movie. That's not in the Disney one for kids. That definitely
Mm-hmm.
wasn't. And he was, and like there was like religious connections. They had the connection to war, World War I, and then World War II, fascism. Like there was a lot of just themes that were not in the original because it is a darker tone for sure. The animation's darker in general, and like Pinocchio dies multiple times in this movie. Like it's just the overall tone's just darker. And yes, we talked about how the original Pinocchio animated movie was scary to us as kids, even gives me the heebie-jeebies today. But like that was just because of the creepiness factor more so than the actual like scariness of this movie that kids would be scared of, I think, today.
Yeah, like when I was thinking about this, like why does this movie work, but the Disney live action one doesn't? And I think it feels like these live action ones are just creatively bankrupt, where they feel like they're just trying to make it as close to the original animated movie as possible and just plug in our favorite actors into these like um I guess coveted roles. But it's not bringing anything new to the table. Like Guillermo del Toro, you could tell he put everything into this movie, right? The difference, you talk about the stop motion aspect, the behind the scenes where he has different sizes of these characters, how they're going to appear on camera. You hear like the interviews he has, the passion, like him on the red carpet talking about what went into this and how animation is not just for kids. Those Disney live action remakes, they're almost trying to reintroduce that same 1940s animated story, right, into live action so they could be accepted by kids today. Like Del Toro, with a lot of the more mature themes here, he doesn't, I think to me, I don't know if I would show my kid this movie, right? It's a lot of facing death. It's a lot of like father son relationships, but instead of like a classic Pinocchio where it's taking a total perspective from Pinocchio, there's a lot of Geppetto in this. The people that like even the like there's a lot of parallels here, like Spazzatura and like the villain played by Podesta, I think his name. No. It's the one played by Christoph Waltz. It's like
Volpe.
Volpe and Spazzatura. It's like a parallel to the relationship between uh, Geppetto and Pinocchio, and the same thing can be said between Candlewick and Podesta, right? The Italian fascist son and the father. It's just the expectations and the child feeling like a burden, and like how a parent really should approach raising their kid. It's not for a 6-year-old, right? And you're right, they do look a little. He's shaking his head
Definitely
vehemently.
not.
Ricky Flick says, um, and it just looks scary. Like Volpe, the Christoph Waltz character, it looks like his head is on fire in this movie.
On purpose, that I think.
Yes, and if you notice, like the design of Volpe's character, who has the long nose, right, compared to Geppetto, the flat nose. You got Volpe. It's protruding out even further than Pinocchio's to say like kind of how much of a scumbag this guy is and how much of a liar he is. So I guess like you could make an argument, and I think where this movie kind of like is going to get criticized, it almost uh distances itself too much from the original story, right? Did you ever get that feeling, or do you think it was just a refreshing take from Del Toro?
I think it was more refreshing for me. For like, definitely just to bring it back to Zemeckis's live action Pinocchio, which I thought was a catastrophe, or disaster. This was more refreshing, even though it wasn't refreshing to watch because of all the death and like scariness of it. But it was just from a creativity standpoint, something new to see. Like definitely, definitely refreshing. But also just to say, like, yes, I think there was two main like from because like obviously original Pinocchio. What do you think of? You think okay, he goes to the carnival, but then he also goes to that island where they turn into donkeys, right? And there's other like mini storylines there that happen. But in this one, they focus on the carnival aspect, and then he adds a new one. Now, the new one I wasn't particularly fond of. I think the themes hit, everything hits there, but maybe we stretched too far. It was a 2 hour runtime. Maybe if we just kept it 90 minutes and just did the one story with the carnival, be neat, much more neat and tidy. But at the end of the day, that's not what he decided, and I think it was fine. But overall, like I still think even with that, it still was refreshing from a creativity standpoint, and I'm fine with it.
Yeah, so like I usually don't have as much of an issue when you distance from a source material, but like it was to a point where like you forgot about like the whole nose thing with Pinocchio, right? It happens only a couple times in this movie. The third act, they finally bring it back to, right? I'm not gonna no spoilers, but like they like I guess bring it all home regarding the lying and the nose. But like I think it just takes a perspective more with like a lot of the adults and the other kids in the story and gaining their perspective and how they can connect with Pinocchio. So I guess like what makes Pinocchio Pinocchio is the nose. That's what people think of. And when you're not doing the nose thing, it's like, okay, well, it's just, like, you're just telling a different story then.
I don't know how many times you want the nose thing though. I think they did it a
Well,
fair amount of times.
okay, I'm not going to say how many they did at it for spoiler purposes. Um, yes, no, I hear you. So I guess where do we go next? I think I agree with you when you said like it felt a little bit long, a little overstuffed. It brings in like that Italian fascist storyline where it's there. It starts to feel like, okay, what direction are we going? Are we just going to tell the same thing again? Uh, in that regard, I like it because I like the World War II setting. I like the emphasis, like the allusions to like Mussolini, Italy, what's happening, really building you into this setting and then reminding you of like earlier on what happens at the beginning of this movie, what Geppetto goes through with his son. So it was overstuffed, but I still had a blast watching it. And there's now a moment where I was saying to myself, okay, we can skip this. Like, even if I felt it was getting overstuffed and the story was kind of getting out of hand, I was still like engaged. It still had me, you know? Where I want to go next is the cast here. I think personally, I felt like the cast was on point. I really do. I think Gregory Mann as Pinocchio was spot on. You needed a kid that was pre-pubescence, I guess. Is that what you call it when they haven't gone through puberty yet? His voice is like extremely high. It can be a bit annoying, but that's the point. Super inquisitive kid. And I loved his interactions with Geppetto, played by David Bradley. Shout out Harry Potter and shout out Game of Thrones. Okay. I thought those two, right, bouncing back and forth, the high pitch with like the aggravated David Bradley. It seems like perfect casting. Ewan McGregor as Sebastian Cricket, not Jiminy, Sebastian Cricket. I think like it's something about Ewan McGregor. He's so great at these voice roles. He was awesome in the live action Beauty and the Beast. I forgot which character he was. He was just like
He was the candlestick.
Candlestick. That's what he was. But I thought he was
Funny, there's a
amazing in that too. I think it just goes with the Ewan McGregor charm. Ron Perlman as Podesta, this fascist leader. It's like, yeah, you look at Ron Perlman, you're like, yep, I see it. You know, everything was on point. And you have obviously Christoph Waltz playing Volpe, the main villain here. It's incredible. And then like having Kate Blanchett playing Spazzatura, somehow voicing like these animalist, these monkey noises the entire movie. I was like, that just made me think like, I think she just wanted to be a part of this because she knew it was going to be like Academy conversation. And she likes working with Del Toro. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't. If you told me that Toro was Kate Blanchett after this movie, which you did, but I knew it beforehand, I wouldn't have been like, "Oh yeah, I knew that." Like I could tell. Like no, you can't tell it's Kate Blanchett. So it's clearly like not for her. Like she did this for just to work with Del Toro and do a little voice role, easy work for her, easy paycheck, but also for like a auteur filmmaker, and I respect that. But if I had to like power rank these performances here, like top 5,
Oh, I like this.
I would go Gregory Mann at 5 because his voice was too annoying at times. I don't care
Right.
puberty. It was too annoying at times. Singing, it did work, but the voice itself got annoying.
Stayed away from all the classic, like maybe it's because Disney owns those songs, but like it stayed
Yes,
away from like the when you wish upon a star and like all that
but
stuff.
it
It felt
worked.
yeah,
It,
no,
it
no,
did go.
and
It did work.
the songs that they played, I think added to the story a lot.
And
And
the
especially with the
culture, Italian culture, it
mhm.
did work. But yeah, I would go Gregory Mann at 5 as Pinocchio. I would go David Bradley at 4 with potential to go to 3 as Geppetto. He was a good drunk and then overall like arching story, comeback story. Like he did do well. I would go Perlman at 3. He just played a Podesta like fascist leader or informant type role or direct yeah, just office army officer role very well. Just has the voice for it. And then it's a battle for 1. I'll go Christoph Waltz as 2, but I don't know if he could have done much better. He was that spot on. And Ewan
Mhm.
McGregor, I think you used the word for me, charm. He has that charm about it. Where also Jiminy Cricket in this movie, this isn't a spoiler, this right off the top, he's an author. Ewan McGregor with English accent. It just helps all around as like a very smart person with redeeming qualities, like in the charmness of it. As a Jiminy Cricket that has some laughs in this movie as well. I have to go with him at 1.
And I think we also have to shout out Tilda Swinton. Tilda Swinton as like the fairy, right? That grants the wishes and whatever. I think she was awesome. I think she is just also spot on casting. When you look at this cast and you saw Kate Blanchett was on here, you would assume she was playing that role. All right. But I feel like her and Tilda Swinton are kind of interchangeable in that kind of scenario. You think of like Galadriel and Lord of the Rings. I think of like this fairy, you know, in the underworld and above, you know, that's talking consistently with Pinocchio that brings like a type of regal like dialogue.
I honestly did think that Kate Blanchett, before looking at the cast scene in this movie, I thought she was going to be that guardian angel, not Tilda Swinton. I thought she would be like a more villainous character, and it's funny how they kind of switch, but they are interchangeable not only in voice but also in acting. They could do the same thing. Like in Nightmare Alley, I could have easily seen Tilda Swinton play Kate Blanchett, the therapist role there too. Like it's just that a lot of their roles you could just like interchange them, and they would both do the same thing.
Yeah, honestly. I guess before the scores too, do you think this is gonna be nominated for Best Picture?
That's a great question. I guess I'll start off by saying this will easily be nominated for Best Animated Feature Film. In my opinion, I think it should win. I think it should win. I'm saying it right now. Don't know what the betting odds are, but if
Over
they're,
Marcel the Shell?
I that's not a pure animation that will get nominated, but I think this has the Del Toro name attached. It has the cast attached and a story that's unique but now creative. I think this will have the edge and will win. I think that Marcel the Show will get nominated. Turning Red will get nominated, but this will beat out Pixar. You know my thoughts on Turning Red. I have this as a leader in the clubhouse, and I think it deserves it. Now, Best Picture, tough one. This year is so tough. I think November didn't go as planned for all these Best Picture nominees. Like, we have barely seen any of the Best Picture nominees that are out in theaters that came out this month, right? Wakanda Forever kind of took over. Not a lot of people have seen those movies. It's been tough. So they're going to need, and also what makes it tough is that we have another blockbuster coming out this weekend, which is preventing people to see these films again. So there's not a lot of buzz going around except like Brendan Fraser for Best Actor. So it's Best Picture's kind of wide open to get 10 nominations. Can I see this getting squeezed in? Yes. But is it a definite? No.
I think it's getting nominated. I think it's a lot of it has to do with first of all, the Academy loves Del Toro now. Like they like Nightmare Alley got an unexpected Best Picture nomination last year, right after Del Toro took a year or two off following his Shape of Water win. So I think I like the Academy has an affinity towards him, and also this is a more mature animated movie. It's not Toy Story 3 getting nominated. This is a adaptation of a classic, right, kids tale that was made for adults, you know. And this and the I guess that is going to be something where it's like, okay, this is for all audiences, and it's kind of transforming what we think about animation, and it's trying to set a bar where it's not just right for infants and for young people. So in that regard, I think they might want to flip the script and like be on that train, right? Join what Del Toro is trying to say through this campaign, and it gets nominated. Let's go with scores. What do you give this movie?
This is a tough one because I want to. It's similar to Avatar, what we're about to talk about next. Because yes, you have to give this movie credit for what it's doing. Took original IP and kind of like kept its core, but changed it. And I have to give it credit. Similar like Avatar, you have to give credit to the visual effects and this transformation that it did. And also, it's Cameron. This is Del Toro, and he had his touches on it, and just the magic moments he had. But at the end of the day, like it just things came together quickly in the third act, and I didn't like the new storyline he added. I just didn't love it. I'm giving it an 84. I wanted to go higher, but I really I didn't really like that part of it. I think it's substantial for me. 84.
93 for me. This movie I thought was one of the best things I saw all year, and whether it's animated or live action, just the amount of like care that Del Toro had and the way he was able to like transform this story and basically put Disney on their ass after what they did earlier this year, and it just tells me Del Toro is like one of the greatest storytellers we have right now, and I'm all in on him right now. Like I bought his stock. Like I should have bought a stock, like Pan's Labyrinth, and I should have been in after Shape of Water, and then like Nightmare Alley. I know you're a huge fan of. I was like, yeah, it was pretty good. And then this one is just like blew me away. I don't think a lot of filmmakers could have done what he did here, and that says a lot.